Welcome to the Passive Investing Show. I'm Ashley Wilson, and I'm joined today with my co-host, Jay Scott. On today's episode, we had Nick Friedman from College H.U.N.K.S, Hauling Junk, and Kinetics.
Yeah, this was a great episode. Nick is an awesome guy. I know you have met Nick a couple times, and I've met Nick once, and we were really excited to talk to him, and we were not disappointed. So I hate reading people's bios because it sounds so inauthentic, but I have to mention just a couple of things that Nick has done. So first of all, Nick is the co-founder of College H.U.N.K.S Hauling Junk and Moving. It's a company that you've probably heard of. If you haven't, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but basically 250 franchises around the country, over $300 million in annual sales. Nick was named one of the top 30 entrepreneurs in America under 30 by Inc. magazine. And as I mentioned in the show, he shared that honor with people like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. He's a three-time Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award finalist. He's been on Shark Tank. He's been on Oprah's show. He's been on Millionaire Matchmaker. He's been on Undercover Boss. I mean, just a tremendously successful entrepreneur. And more importantly, just a tremendously down-to-earth guy who we just had a great conversation about his businesses. And for those who are interested on the investing side, we talked a lot about how you can passively invest in franchises. And this was something that I think neither Ashley nor I realized, that it was possible to get into franchise ownership as a completely or almost completely passive investor. And Nick tells us all about how to do that with both his franchises and with others. So without any further ado, let's welcome Nick to the show.
Welcome, Nick, to the show. We are so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. For those listeners who didn't see you on Shark Tank and don't know who you are, can you talk a little bit about your background and what you're doing today?
Yes, so I'm the co-founder of College H.U.N.K.S Hauling Junk and Moving. Today we are the largest franchise opportunity for moving and junk removal services. You mentioned Shark Tank. We've also more recently been on Undercover Boss. We've got over 200 franchise owners, going to do over $300 million in sales this year, but started from very humble beginnings. Started in college, hence the name, and we started with a beat-up cargo van. My business partner, who I had gone to high school with, his mom had this cargo van from her furniture store, and she said, you know what, why don't you guys borrow the van? You guys could be like College H.U.N.K.S who haul junk. And we kind of laughed about it at first and said, you know what, that's kind of catchy. So we put it on a flyer, we stuck it in mailboxes, and the phone started ringing. We recognized that people had a need for the service, and they thought the name was catchy. I always tell the story, when we first started, we were doing all the work ourselves, driving the truck, answering the phone, hauling the junk, and we had the 800 number on the back of our truck routed to our cell phone. So people would call sometimes to complain about erratic driving, and inevitably I'd be in the driver's seat answering the phone, apologizing, letting them know we don't condone that type of driving in our company, pretending it wasn't me. Probably fired ourselves at least 3 or 4 times that first summer. So it was anything but passive in those early days. I can tell you that much. We were doing all the heavy lifting, and one of our mentors recommended to us a book called The E-Myth Revisited. It's by a guy named Michael Gerber. And of course, in that book, he talks all about in order to grow a business, you've got to learn how to work on the business, not just in the business. You've got to create systems and processes for the business to scale. So that was kind of the light bulb moment for us. If we're ever going to have another truck, let alone another location, we need to start documenting and systemizing how we do things. And so that was what set us down the path to eventually franchise the company. And as you mentioned, we've had some fortunate breaks on national television and some PR exposure. And I call ourselves a over 15-year overnight success because that's kind of how long it's taken us to get to where we are today. But we've enjoyed the journey along the way as well.
Yeah, and I think you sold yourself a little short. You didn't mention the fact that you were named one of the top 30 entrepreneurs in America under 30 by Inc. magazine. I think guys like Bill Gates and Michael Dell and Mark Zuckerberg also shared the same accolade. So you sold yourself a little short there.
Well, I would always joke when I would say that we were in that same category with those guys. It was should have been like college kid to billionaire plus Nick and Omar, because we're not quite at the B level yet. or my kids watch Sesame Street. One of these things is not quite like the other one. But I think what the media did do, including the Inc. 30 under 30 list, is they recognized in our business we were taking something very traditional, trucks and labor, which exists probably since somebody invented the wheel, and we put a very intentional focus on a creative brand, a very intentional focus on the internal culture and the service, and that's really been our secret sauce, because anybody can go out and get a truck and start offering moving and hauling services, but what we've done differently is really a brand that catches people's attention, and then a service and a culture for the employees that makes people passionate and want to do business with.
I love that. And so one of the main drivers of the success of your business was your ability to franchise. Can you talk to us a little bit about your journey from being the guy driving the truck and answering the calls, yelling at you for how bad you were driving, to basically franchising the business and growing the business? I think you mentioned over 200 franchisees at this point. What did that evolution look like?
Yes. So after reading the E-Myth, we started learning about this franchise concept as a way to expand the brand. And at the time, it sounded like a glamorized way to grow. I'll be honest with you, we heard the word royalty stream. We immediately actually thought passive income, but franchising a company as a franchisor is really also not very passive, because we are not only selling the franchises to aspiring business owners or investors, but we are also providing the support system and the tools and the call center, the marketing, the logistics and software technology platform for the franchise owners to run and operate their business and deliver the service more effectively. So when we first started getting into it, we really became students of what franchising was all about. We joined the International Franchise Association, started attending trade shows with that organization, learning from mentors, listening to podcasts and things like that, like this session, where it was, how do we take our business that's successful in its own right by itself and turn it into a business model that people would want to invest in and make their own business in their own market. And so that was a pretty steep learning curve, and we were in our early 20s, and we were just trying to get things figured out. This was as social media was starting to come of age, and so we hadn't really taken advantage or figured out how to take full advantage of that from a marketing standpoint yet. And it really wasn't until probably we crossed the 50 franchise mark that things really started to accelerate more quickly. And that was really over the past couple of years, to be honest, where things really started to accelerate to where, it took us, probably 10, 12 years to get to 100 million in sales, and then another 2 or 3 million to get to, another 2 or 3 years to get to 300 million. And so that, that acceleration, that momentum, that compound effect is certainly real. But in the early days, it was just trying to roll up our sleeves and understand the overall franchise business model, which at the core of it is, it's a business model that works, and somebody can invest to have ownership of that brand and those tools, that toolkit, to then operate the business in the respective market or geography that they want to open it in.
Yeah, I love that, and I often equate entrepreneurship to like a plane heading down a runway, and for the first 20 seconds you don't really feel like you're getting anywhere. You don't have any lift, you're not off the ground, but what you realize later is that once you take off, that if it weren't for that first 20 seconds, that first big part of that flight where you're gaining momentum, you really can't get to the next phase. And that first phase can take a hell of a long time, but ultimately it's that compound effect that you mentioned, that snowball effect, that really lets you go.
It's funny, is we used to equate, I like the fact that, at least in your example, we're still on the ground. The example we used to use is that we were already in the air, but we were still trying to build the plane.
Yeah.
So we were flying, but the plane hadn't been fully built yet. And so it's probably a combination of those two examples that you used. And that is also actually, in the franchise model, why a lot of people will invest in a franchise opportunity, because the plane is already built. You're sort of getting handed the baton midway through the relay race, and you just kind of have to take it home. Or in some cases, the franchisor can take it home for you, because we call it being in business for yourself but not by yourself, is ultimately the mantra we use in our system, and it's been an effective way to scale the brand for us.
I think when most people think about franchises, they think that it is exclusively an active way to invest, but it sounds like you've created an opportunity where this could be a passive way that someone could invest. Could you speak to that and elaborate?
Yes, so there's over 3,000 franchise opportunities out there. So there's a lot of different ways that somebody could invest in a business model. And College H.U.N.K.S hauling junk and moving is one example of that. We're invested in another franchise called K.O.K.S, which is basically a youth enrichment program for after school. Think of it like PE after school for kids to sign up in group PE classes. And both the College H.U.N.K.S business and the K.O.K.S business, when we first started, it was primarily owner operated, meaning the franchisee would invest and then they would be operating the day-to-day of the business, hiring the employees, going out and generating more business. But we recognized an opportunity both, again, with College H.U.N.K.S and K.O.K.S to create an investor model or absentee owner, or in some cases what we call semi-absentee owner, where the owner may have the capital but not the time or bandwidth to spend on running the day-to-day. So the franchisor helps identify an operating manager or general manager to run the day-to-day, but that person running the day-to-day may not have had the capital to start it. So it kind of creates a bit of a win-win where we can pair somebody that could be really effective at running the business with somebody who's interested in investing in a business. And there's quite a few franchise opportunities out there of varying levels of investment threshold. I think, K.O.K.S, somebody can get involved for less than $100,000 all in, including the franchise fee. Our franchise startup for a College H.U.N.K.S business is probably closer to $250,000 for an absentee model because of the trucks, warehouses, and equipment and so forth. But then, somebody could go out and invest in a Subway where you might pay, $500,000 to $1 million for one store. And then there's probably stuff that's even less investment than the K.O.K.S model. So there's a wide swath of investment levels. There's a wide swath of business types and categories, right? There's food, there's retail, there's service like College H.U.N.K.S, there's youth enrichment like K.O.K.S, and so those are the varying options, and it's quite a wide ecosphere. So anybody who was maybe thinking about getting involved in franchising, I would advise to spend some time researching. Look at the International Franchise Association's website. There's actually franchise brokers out there who specialize in, think of them almost like real estate agents, but for selecting a franchise to invest in. So they kind of help work with people that are thinking about investing or buying a franchise and identify what's the right fit for them. So if somebody's looking for a passive franchise investment, then they're going to eliminate all franchise opportunities that are solely or exclusive active franchise opportunities, and they're going to look solely at ones that have an absentee or a semi-absentee option for them. So you're absolutely right. It's a wide universe out there, and it's worth doing some research to explore what might be a good fit or a good investment opportunity.
What I think is really cool and neat and pretty innovative of what you are doing is you're essentially taking the concepts of the book Traction, where they specifically call out that successful businesses typically have a visionary and an integrator, and you're pairing those two together and delivering it in a franchise model. It seems like, from what you just mentioned, you said that you're pairing these two folks together in a sense that someone can actually operate the business while someone could be passively invested, maybe even be more of a visionary role for that partnership.
You're absolutely right. And you actually mentioned one of my other favorite books, Traction. We operate our corporate operation off of the EOS model. My partner and I are co-founders in the visionary seat. And then we have an integrator, a brand president who we put in place to really oversee the day-to-day. And you're absolutely right. We've brought sort of that Traction EOS concept down to the franchise owner level, the franchisee level, where we can try to pair an integrator or operator with the investor or owner. And we're actually bringing a bunch of Traction EOS speakers to our franchise conference in February to help bring those concepts and tools to our entire system, down to the franchise owner level as well.
Yeah, I find this really interesting. So I feel like I'm pretty familiar with franchises in general, but I've never really considered a franchise as a passive investment. But I guess just like anything else, if you're willing to put in a certain amount of work and you're willing to put in the money, there's no reason why it couldn't be. So let's talk about that work. So for any passive investment, there's going to be some work. Some passive investments, you put in a whole bunch of work up front to research the investment and the investment thesis and to do all your due diligence. You put your money in and you don't touch it again. You don't think about it again. Others, you have some ongoing investment of time. So for somebody that owns a rental property, for example, it's never going to be truly passive. You're going to be putting in time to either manage the property or manage your manager, for example. So can you talk to us a little bit about somebody, let's say somebody wanted to come in and franchise or buy a franchise of College H.U.N.K.S, but run it passively. What does it look like in terms, you already mentioned in terms of money, somewhere between, $100,000 for K.O.K.S, up to $250,000 for College H.U.N.K.S. But in terms of time, what should somebody expect in terms of upfront time to like get ready to make the investment, the amount of time once the investment's made, and then the ongoing time while you're holding the investment?
That's a good question. I think the real estate analogy is an interesting one that you gave, because you're absolutely right. If you're investing at least directly in a property that you're acquiring, you're going to have to spend some time either getting it leased or hiring and managing a manager to get it leased and keep it leased and so forth. And I think similar with a franchise model, it's not a limited partnership situation where you're just writing a check and collecting a K-1 once a year, and the owners are going to tell you how the business is doing, or a publicly traded company where you're just sort of watching the stock and deciding when to trade it or whatnot. So there will be some involvement. Maybe attending the franchise training would be, I think, a wise decision, just to be understanding the model itself. Certainly being involved in the selection process of the operating partner or operating manager would be important. If it's not somebody that maybe they already had a relationship with or already knew that they brought into the business, but somebody that we as the franchisor helped bring to the table, we'd want to make sure there was some alignment there, and then maybe participation in the annual franchise conference, I think, would be worthwhile attending as well. I've got a friend who is a franchisee. He's a real estate guy, but he's a franchisee of several, Hilton hotels, Marriott hotels, Intercontinental hotels. So, he's a real estate guy, and he considers those real estate investments passive investments, but he's also a franchisee by, leveraging the brand of those, kind of flagship, iconic hotel, management platforms, if you will. So he attends the franchise conferences. He may be on a franchise board, for the real estate side of things. And so I think, attending the training, maybe some ongoing engagement with making sure that you're plugged into, how your investment's performing, reviewing the P&Ls, attending the annual conference. I think that would be the extent of it for a relatively passive absentee owner. And you guys are probably far more versed in the various passive investment opportunities that are out there. But investing in a fund, it's which I've done myself from time to time. It's writing a check. It's like you said, doing some diligence, writing a check, and then just sort of reviewing the performance. Investing in a property, if I'm the direct owner or primary manager of it, then I'm a little bit more active, but it's still a passive investment because I'm not spending every day working on that project. So I think it's probably somewhere in between that example there.
Well, let's say I wanted to invest, and let's say I had a bunch of money, but I didn't have the time, and let's say I consider the idea of finding my own general manager kind of daunting. Do you have some way of kind of pairing up people that are interested in kind of operating a franchise but don't have the cash to invest, and with people who might have the cash to invest but want to do it passively, and kind of bring them together so that they don't have to figure out how to find each other offline?
So the answer is yes, both with the K.O.K.S franchise that we're invested in, we've had great success with the absentee owner general manager model, where where the franchisor helps identify the operating partner, and then same with College H.U.N.K.S. We're having some success with that as well, where we're bringing in a passive investor and perhaps bringing somebody that's had some success within the system already, familiar with the brand, and then wants a new opportunity to open up a new market. So we've seen that work well also.
Great, Nick. Thank you so much for explaining, especially for me, as I'm at fault for being someone who didn't recognize franchises as an opportunity to be a passive investor. I think this will be extremely eye-opening to a lot of folks listening, just because franchises historically have had kind of a stigma, being not a stigma, but they've just had, people often think that they have to be an active investment. So I think the way that you've set it up, you've automated the entire process, soup to nuts, really lends itself well to someone, especially anyone who's listening right now, who's interested in coming in a passive investing capacity, that this is definitely a really good opportunity, whether it be with College H.U.N.K.S or H.U.N.K.S. But it seems like both models have been structured very well thought out, I may add as well, to a passive investor. At this point, we're going to transition to a section of the show that we like to ask all of our guests the same 3 questions. So hopefully you're ready for them.
Fire away.
The first question is, what new thing have you recently invested in or are currently researching?
So currently invested in and or researching is actually, I'm a passive investor in a concept called Franchise 123, and it is looking to be the Zillow of franchise sales. So it's looking to be kind of an all-in-one platform opportunity for anyone thinking about buying or investing in a franchise to do their research and possibly even transact on that site. And so I like that concept because sort of like what we've been talking about today, it gives the entire universe of the franchise opportunities out there, and it can help somebody research whether an opportunity is passive or active or fits with their investment thesis or threshold or interests. So there's a lot of, kind of franchise portals that are out there where people can do that type of research, but this particular model is seeking to, I think, take it to the next level with a, really web forward platform that can help people research and review the franchise documents and transact directly. So I've recently made an investment in that, and it's going to be one that I'm going to be, watching to see how it unfolds.
Franchise 123, love it. Okay, second question. What current either economic situation or legislation or political situation are you kind of looking at closely because you're concerned it might have an impact on your business over the next couple of years?
So our business at the consumer level is very tied to the housing market. So clearly with interest rates rising and, some folks projecting that housing market will slow down a little bit, we worry about a little bit of a deceleration potentially in our space. But we were open for business during the housing crash of 08, 09, and we were able to kind of muscle through that and pivot to other areas where our trucks and our labor could be of service. And so, less concerning there. Also on the cost of capital, similar theme. With franchise owners investing in a franchise, oftentimes they are, funding it with a 401k rollover or a Roth IRA rollover. And, if their accounts have been, depleted a little bit because of the market correction this year, they may be less inclined to transfer that over and harvest those losses into a franchise opportunity, although it could be a wise decision considering some of the public markets volatility. So I think probably those two things. Then, of course, sometimes franchise owners are getting an SBA loan or home equity line to, fund the franchise. And, if interest rates continue to climb, that could be a bit of a challenge as well. But the one thing I do say, obviously policy, we've been dealing with various policies over the years. I try to remind myself, the rules are still the same for everybody else who's playing the game. So as long as we can just outthink and out operate the competition, it may not be as, raining gold as it used to be, a year or two ago, but, we can still thrive in any situation. And so that's kind of the resiliency and the grit that we kind of, keep trying to remind ourselves and would encourage other investors and owners and entrepreneurs to think of as well.
I love that answer because it really shows how connected and in touch you are with the ground level, meaning the people coming into the franchise, recognizing where they're getting their capital to invest and the threats that are placed on that capital to be able to keep acquiring new customers, so to speak, into your franchise is really important. It's an integral part of your business, and you speaking on that obviously shows that you're very in touch with your entire ecosystem. The last question we always ask our guests is, what is the best piece of advice, it could be investing advice, that you've ever received?
The best piece of advice, I want to give two. One is kind of a broader just mantra of ours, which is to, have patience for results, but urgency of effort. I think that's, important because, sometimes, like I said, our 15-year overnight success happened over the course of a long period of time. And, during that 15-year journey, there were times where I was like, I don't think we're going to make it. This is tough. And now here we are kind of on the other side with a very, successful business and making a really meaningful impact. The other piece of advice was one my dad gave me, which is I think one his dad gave him, which is as it relates to investing, do what you know. Obviously you can expand what you know, but don't just start, throwing money at stuff that you have no idea about or don't understand or don't comprehend. And a great example of that, would be in my case, I didn't understand cryptocurrencies when they first came out. I know there was a big frenzy about them. And I started doing a lot of research around them before I started deploying capital and investing in it, which I do have and hold some pretty meaningful investments in cryptocurrencies. But at the time when they first came out, I didn't know anything about them. So I did the research and felt comfortable, making some investments in that space. And, same thing with real estate. I didn't know it at the beginning, but now I'm doing quite a few real estate deals. And, obviously my primary expertise is in franchising, which is why I did the K.O.K.S franchise investment, the franchise 123 platform investment. So trying to keep things in the spaces where I'm familiar with, I think is an important piece of advice that I've tried to stick to as well. So investing where I know, or if I don't know something, doing the diligence and learning enough about it to feel comfortable to make the investment.
I love it. You gave us a 2-for-1 there. Really appreciate that. Okay.
I always give a little bit more than people expect, right?
I love it. There you go. There's number 3 right there. Nick, for anybody that's listening that wants to find out more about you, find out more about K.O.K.S, find out more about College H.U.N.K.S, hauling junk, any of your franchise opportunities or anything else you've got going on, what's the best way to get in touch with you or to find out more?
So you can go to my personal website, nickfriedman.com, where you can connect with, all my social media connections, as well as, contact me directly. You can learn about just sort of my speaking or my writing, and of course my entrepreneurship. To connect with College H.U.N.K.S, go to collegehunks.com. You can learn about the franchise opportunities. Obviously, if you got to move or you need junk hauled, you know who to call. And then franchise123.com is the platform to do some research on franchise opportunities. And of course, K.O.K.S is the other franchise concept that we're involved with. So, but if you want to get directly with me, nickfriedman.com would be the easiest, and we could talk about all those other angles or avenues that way.
Well, thank you so much again for joining our show, Nick. This has been another incredible episode that we will definitely have as our top episode. I am sure of it. If you want to get in touch with Nick, make sure to check out nickfriedman.com. We hope that you've enjoyed listening to this show, and we hope that this show has provided more wealth in your journey to have your money work for you.